Sure thing. Hello, we are Columbia GRC, and we are proud to make our presentation on sustainable innovation in Indonesian palm oil farming practices. In this presentation, we'll be going over 5 main things. We'll be giving you the context, the role of farming and crude oil supply in the market, the impact of traceability and data analytics, the role of government intervention, and then we'll conclude with an implementation timeline for our strategy.
So we are a consulting firm looking to advise Wilmar, which is the largest global and Indonesian refinery by output, to increase both smallholder sustainability and supply chain traceability. So Wilmar is responsible for 34% of Indonesian refined palm oil, and as such, has a very large supply chain impact, market power, and balance sheet to institute significant change within the industry. Moreover, some of their smaller competitors, for example, First Resources, have instituted higher degrees of traceability within their own supply chains, pushing pressure on Wilmar to keep up and increase their own traceability for their own clients as well. Moreover, palm oil is a pretty substitutable good. Pretty much every refinery produces a very similar product. And so we're looking to help Wilmar continue to differentiate their product so they do not have to compete on a cost basis with their competitors. One way we're going to do that is through this added traceability element and through these sustainable practices with their smallholders. In essence, Wilmar is uniquely positioned to affect huge sustainability impact in the palm oil supply chain through our proposal. They can increase their profits, they can differentiate their product, and they can also create social good in the process. Ohad is going to further set the stage for us now.
When we look at the market for palm oil in Indonesia, we see a competitive, legislative, technological, and environmental mess that makes it really difficult for all agencies involved, but most particularly small farms, to make the sustainable development choices that we need and that the industry desperately needs. But this mess actually presents an opportunity for disruption, and if Wilmar has a strong financial and capital strategy, it can capitalize on that and make a better opportunity both for themselves and for the industry as a whole. Because of this lack of development, we see a supply shortage at the farm level that causes mills and refineries to operate below capacity. So if Wilmar, with our strategy, can help increase farm output and then match it with an increase in their own refinery capacity, they'll be able to grow the market and then capitalize on that to grow the market share. Our strategy will include ways to do that in a sustainable way that is both affordable and financially attractive, but also environmentally efficient. Specifically, our strategy is to utilize market and financial mechanisms to create an environment conducive to sustainable growth by partnering with smallholder farms and by financing sustainable development strategies and implementations. Our specific goal is to increase farm output by 10 million metric tons of crude palm oil by the 10th year of this program. As a revenue mechanism, Wilmar will commit to purchase up to 52 million tons of crude palm oil developed through this practice at up to 50% of the future market value. This commitment to purchase presents a really strong guarantee of purchase for the small farms so that they have to take on less risk when they join us in this development. And it's also an attractive bet for Wilmar because that future market value will present itself as an opportunity to gain revenue. Specifically, we're looking to finance technology and other kinds of innovations that allow smallholder farms to make these kinds of developments and grow their supply without having to rely on deforestation or incendiary land clearing. Instead, we're looking to finance sustainable technologies that can make the industry more environmentally efficient as a whole. Our financial model shows that the costs for this will be about $10 billion in capital investment over 10 years. We recommend that $5 billion of it come from Wilmar's cash on hand and $5 billion come from capital debt. This sounds like a lot of money, but Wilmar is actually in an excellent place to take this on. As of 2019, Wilmar had $2 billion in cash on hand, and that number is growing. We believe that this strategy will be an excellent opportunity for them to invest and set the stage for a sustainable revolution in the palm oil industry in Indonesia. Our financial model also makes some forecasts for the pecuniary benefits of this. By 2024, when our trees first mature and the first round of our commitments to purchase come into effect, we project a net income of $1.47 billion. And by 2032, the lifespan net income of this program will be as much as $24.4 billion.
In addition to our sustainability commitments to smallholders, we're also going to institute an added level of traceability within our supply chain to then produce added value for Wilmar's clients. As you can see in the graph below, Wilmar currently does trace their supply to the mill level. However, there is very, very small proportions of its crude palm oil that is traceable to the plantation. So we are suggesting that by partnering with these smallholders, we are able to gain intimate data and knowledge and capture that about our plantation level supply, transfer that to our own data collection, and then bring that to Wilmar's clients, namely PepsiCo, Unilever, and the like. And so essentially, through leveraging Wilmar's partnerships with these smallholders, like I said, we can pass on the data. We can also use this data to ensure partners are maintaining the correct levels of sustainability per our financing contracts, and use this data to generate operational efficiencies. In addition to increasing the use of data with these partner smallholders, we're also going to institute programs to ensure there is sufficient traceability with non-partner smallholder farms through things like geolocating cell phones to make sure the supply chain is trackable throughout the entire lifespan of the palm oil product. And so essentially this is going to have two separate effects. It will add value to Wilmar's product and help differentiate them when they sell to final goods producers, like I mentioned, like PepsiCo. PepsiCo's clients are looking for supply chain sustainability. They see palm oil on the label. They're very conscientious that is environmentally degrading. And PepsiCo is then looking toward its own suppliers to see what they can do to add value to PepsiCo that way. This is very similar with many other final goods producers that Wilmar sells to. In addition, it will also create more accountability within the supply chain network for both partner and non-partner smallholders, which will thus incentivize smallholders to take on sustainability effects. Right now, there is no traceability to any major degree to these smallholder farms, and therefore there is no incentive for them to be sustainable because no one really knows what their plans are or if they're using these negative deforestation tactics. And so by increasing transparency, it increases accountability, and that increases the incentives for the smallholders to, in turn, adopt these practices. And then we're going to step in and provide financial support for them to do so. Now, Taylor is going to talk about the incentives that the government provides for this proposal.
Outline several key policies which the government has implemented within the past 10 to 20 years to stimulate the palm oil industry. The common goal of all of them is to showcase the government demand for palm oil, particularly with regards to the energy and transportation industry, is still very strong. Right now, for example, their goal of establishing a 5% biofuel mandate in energy consumption by 2025 is on track to be short by around 6 million tons, which is a demand that Wilmar will be able to fulfill when the plants reach maturity that same year. The reason for the Indonesian government's interest is due to palm oil's status as a key export, particularly to markets in the EU and China. The EU recently imposed 5-year tariffs, citing that the current system in Indonesia advocates for deforestation and other sustainable violations, which has really motivated Indonesia to recenter their focus on sustainability. China has actually taken the opposite route of decreasing the current tariffs they had in place on palm oil in an attempt to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 on their economy. So the main takeaway of this point is that although demand in these markets has been impacted, it is still very strong and worth investing resources into. To briefly reiterate and summarize our timeline, the first year will be dedicated to the initial proposal and planning stage and finalizing our outreach plans. Actual crop development would be implemented 1 year from now, and we would initiate sustainability initiatives then as well. Finally, in 2025, our plan will start to turn revenue, but more importantly, we will have changed an industry to center more around sustainability and help to eradicate the environmentally harmful practices which are currently in place. Thank you for considering our proposal, and we are now ready for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, team. We'll now start our 5-minute Q&A session with the judges.
I have a question about the smallholder farmers. You said less than 1% were certified, RSPO and ISPO certified. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you will increase certification and training, and what the division is between men and women as far as smallholders, and how this will have a gender impact?
Yeah, I can take the first part of the question for sure. So because we're creating these financial incentives for these small holders to, for example, terminate their, land clearing practices through, incendiary practices and things like that, we're already helping them get halfway to the sustainability thing. So I guess you can break down getting certified into 2 steps. The first step is having those practices, right? And then the second step is like the certification process and getting that accreditation. And so we're definitely, part of our program is helping them get to the sustainability level and helping them transform their initially cheap practices and convenient practices, and providing them the capital to invest long-term into more sustainable options. There is still the component of certification, and we have not specified certain paths to certification in this plan. We definitely make it easier for farmers to get certified, but the other addition is that by increasing the traceability, so now a consumer like you or I, for example, can look, and see like, oh, it came from like this farm, and this farm isn't actually certified. Like, that's kind of strange. It will put market pressure on the farms themselves to find incentives and reasons to certify themselves. That said, it is also an area for future development in the plan to include specific pathways to this sustainability metric. In terms of men versus women, we're really trying to tackle the base level of sustainability, if that makes sense. And one of our mentors asked a question like, are these RSPO and ISPO certifications enough? And the answer is probably not. Is the gender breakdown enough as it is now? No, it is not. At this point, though, we are really trying to get more than 1% of these smallholders at a certain minimal level, and there is still plenty more work to be done. This is by no means an end-all proposal, but at the same time, we're really hoping to roll out some broad, basic sustainability measures across the industry and transform it that way, and then move from there. After.
There are many questions in the chat. Should we go through those, or? Yeah.
Sure.
So for your first question, is there any product differentiation based on sustainability in the international market now? The international market for palm oil is almost completely capitalized by Indonesia and Malaysia, and the process of generating palm oil is pretty much the same throughout. Sustainability is not a principal priority in the major players because it's so cost dependent. So product differentiation really only exists for the smaller refineries. There are some small refineries that are focused on this kind of technology and data analytics and tracing, but for the larger players that have a major market share, there is no product differentiation, and that presents an opportunity for our client to really take control of that and be a leader in the industry.
I can take
For biodiesel. Yeah, Taylor, do you want to do that one?
Yep, I can take the second question in the chat. So about if there are other markets for biodiesel. So there absolutely are. I know the United States and Canada are definitely 2 very large ones. The reason that we focused on Indonesia for our presentation is just so we could emphasize the sustainability, and that there really are a lot of incentives in the current Indonesian government, which we believe would very significantly drive demand, as we spoke about. But yes, there are other markets which we would consider exploring, kind of if the first initial proposal and initial plan was successful.
And then for the last question, verifying changes, that really does come down to how strictly we can start to trace things. The more data we collect, the better. Our goal really is to have an insight into every single step of the supply chain. Right now, the supply chain is extremely fractured and hard to collect data on. So part of our strategy is to invest in new ways to track that data. And the more we learn, the more we'll be able to optimize our logistics, maximize our resource allocation, and thereby reduce our carbon impacts throughout the supply chain for every single partner that we work with.
I had one quick question just on your timeline. I mean, given the holistic, plan that you have, I mean, it seems quite ambitious. So I wanted to push back a little. Do you really think realistically that you'll be able to meet this timeline? And if you can't, are there any contingency plans? Have you thought about if you're not able to meet and fit within this time frame?
So our goal is for 10 million tons of increased capacity or output by the 10th year. It's actually a phase-in plan from the first side. Our goal is by the first round, which will come up in 2025, to increase capacity by 3 million. And we believe that our 1 year starting will allow us to make enough partnerships with smallholder farms. After we get that first planting done, we'll be able to continue the process and reiterate, find more efficient ways to make those partnerships so that by the time we hit our 10th year, we're confident that we'll be able to make that $10 million growth or 10 million ton growth.
This is very much a not all at once proposal. And as Ohad said, we are definitely planning to ramp up the outlay of this proposal as it develops and gets further down the line. To relate back to the initial question, I think in terms of boots on the ground and finding these smallholders, coming up with financial contracts with them, I think a 1 year time frame is very doable, considering just the number of shareholders that we or smallholders that we believe would be interested in this program, and the integration that Winmar already has within Indonesia. And they have like 10 or so different refineries already in Indonesia at the moment, so they're very familiar with the space and the locals.
All right, thank you, team. We're gonna have to wrap up questions now. We're adhering to a tight schedule today. So thank you for answering those questions. We're gonna stop recording.